Tony Marshall's family consists of 4 happy teachers and a maverick son who all love reading and believe that a sense of humor is the surest sign of intelligence. Until his retirement, Tony was principal of Oude Molen Academy of Science and Technology in Cape Town. He was provincial deputy chairperson of NAPTOSA, the largest education union in the Western Cape. He is a proud alumnus of Partners for Possibility 2009, who thinks Louise van Rijn walks on water. He still maintains his ties with many of his PFP year group. He is currently Deputy Provincial Manager at FEDSAS, the largest South African schools governance and management facilitator. He thinks the toughest and most satisfying job in the world is that of a school principal. He believes that they are indeed worth their weight in gold. Yes, true to that. Yes, Mr. Tony Marshall, over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Luba. I must explain something. You know, I'm having a bit of a dig at myself. Anybody in the Western Cape who's ever seen me will know that I'm not inconsiderable in weight. So this reference to worth their weight in gold is just, you know, a reference to, well, looking after myself. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just say a couple of things. And I do apologize if I seem to be contradicting anybody. I don't mean to contradict anybody. All I'm saying is, firstly, that it is absolutely vital to bear in mind that different provinces have different regulations regarding the governing body elections. Now, bearing that in mind, it is absolutely vital to get hold of those and to make sure that you follow them to the letter. Otherwise, there are all sorts of contradictions. I also want to say that from FEDSAS point of view, and I'm sure you will agree, there are 27,000 schools in the country. So we're looking at, on an average of, let's say, 9 in the primary school and 13 in the high school, we're looking at about 300,000 people who have to be elected. And so it's absolutely critical, first of all, that we have no capturing of schools. I think that is absolutely vital. Now, how do you do that? You make sure that you get more than the 15% quorum. How do you do that? We would propose that you either have an online election or that you have an election, a full day election. And obviously you've got to go through the processes with your local PED, your local provincial education department, to get permission to do that. Let me then stop and say, if there are any questions, then please don't hesitate. Put it in the chat box. And I'm sure between Mr. Chetty, superb presentation. Dave, thanks very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I will try to be far shorter. I know we've been going on for almost 65 minutes now. So when we're talking about an SGB and an SMT, and I think this is really important that we make that differentiation. As far as governance is concerned, governance is about oversight and it's about policy. It's not about getting involved in the school. If I can put it this way, the governors stand with their hands in their pockets. The SMT stands with their sleeves rolled up. Let's have a look at that. And in terms of the legislation, and you can see the references to the South African Schools Act there, the SGB includes the principal, and that is vital. But the poor principal has got one foot in the governance structure and another foot in the SMT and in the school, in the management section, the professional management. And so the poor principal is under enormous pressure. If you think about it, talk about 360 degrees of pressure, then that's it. From the education department, because remember, the principal must implement policy, not only the policy of the SGB, because he's got to influence the SGB to make sure that the policy is in line with legislation and with the provincial education department and national legislation. So he has to advise, she has to advise. And remember that the vast majority of our principals are in fact ladies. So data analysis is absolutely critical. And very importantly, the SIP, the School Improvement Plan, the APIP, the Academic Performance Improvement Plan, those are all bits of pretty heavy information that have to go to the governors. Now, Dave has spoken about the chairperson, the deputy chairperson, the treasurer, and the secretary. May I use a different word for the secretary? If I may, I'd like to talk about the steward, because very often, unfortunately, people think that the secretary is essentially someone who does the minutes. Now, the minutes are vital. There's no question about it. The minutes are vital, and a copy of the minutes has to be in the strong room of the school. So it's critical that there are minutes. But the chairperson of the governing body depends heavily on the secretary, and I want to call it the steward. I know the term is secretary, but call it the steward, because the steward is the person who's going to make sure that those committees, and remember, you must have a discipline committee, you must have a finance committee, that those committees actually have minutes, and that those minutes are fed back to the governing body. Ladies and gentlemen, we would propose that you have a curriculum committee to deal with the APIP, the Academic Performance Improvement Plan. But more importantly, let's look at human resources. Human resources are absolutely critical, because no school can be better than the people running it and working in it. Now, that's obvious. That's absolutely obvious. So when one comes to the eventual not WCED, I beg your pardon, I'm from the Western Cape and I see a lot of you there, it's absolutely right. But the Provincial Education Department eventually does the appointment. But the nomination process, the interviews process, that is absolutely vital, because you get someone into the school, as Dave said, just as much as you have potentially a problem with your governors who are there to tell you how to fix things, wow, then you're in trouble. Same with a member of staff member who and of course, with the appointment of a principal, how absolutely vital it is that the appropriate processes are done, and more than that, that you get the best possible human capital, if I may use that term, into your school. Ladies and gentlemen, physical resources, David has spoken about that. But more importantly, I want to go to the point of digital resources. If we take it for granted that COVID is the shape of things to come, we're going to have to be inoculated again and again and again. Our youngsters, all of our youngsters, not just the youngsters from the advantaged schools, but all of our youngsters and all of our teachers must become digital, not immigrants who come out of talk and chalk, but digital natives whose clothes that they wear are digital. Fourth Industrial Revolution. South Africa's got to be better at that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, very important. The implementation role of the principal, well, you can't ever overestimate that. That principal has to report, first of all, to the SGB, but also very much to the Provincial Education Department. So, ladies and gentlemen, governance and professional management are of absolutely vital importance. Most important, I would say, that it's a balancing act. Clearly, it's an incredibly important balancing act, because remember, the school can function because it's a juristic person. In other words, the SGB is a legal person. The SGB can trade. The SGB can make arrangements. The SGB can act as if it were a single person. And the arms and legs of the SGB are in fact its committees, as Davis pointed out. I hasten to add that every single thing, and I mentioned about the idea of capturing of the governing body. Think of the billions that governing bodies have to deal with. So you don't want to have the governing body captured. So most important, everything has to be in the best interests of the school. And ladies and gentlemen, let me refer you to an online document called King 4. It's trademarked and it's very important, but it's the King 4 principles of ethical governance. Please have a look at that. Go to the website www.king4 and you'll find it, I'm sure. Those governance compliance elements are about accountability. Remember, the people who join the governing body, sometimes well, let's not say in my experience, but certainly one hears of people who come around and see what they can get out of the situation. And I'm sorry if I tread on toes. It's true. Some people come in and see what advantage they can get, perhaps to their kids, their friends, whatever. Unfortunately, you get people who want their daughter appointed at the school and that kind of thing. Or their son, please. Importantly is accountability, transparency, responsibility, and fairness. Those are the corporate governance fundamental pillars, ladies and gentlemen, because the governance of responsibility, accountability, fairness, and transparency, those things are vital in the way in which the governors conduct themselves. They're not supposed to walk around in the school and check up on people. No, the principal does the reporting. So when we're looking at the academic core, the finance policy, the discipline policy, the staffing policy, facilities policy, that is absolutely vital for a good school. And ladies and gentlemen, if we're honest, we've got a hang of a lot of very good schools in our country, but certainly we can improve and we must continue to improve. And the way to do that is to have proper policies in place and then to have the energy, the enthusiasm, the love of the youngsters to serve the best interests of the school. And essentially, the best interests of the school turn out to be the youngsters. So that's me. I'm sure Dave and Mr. Chetty, we're more than happy to answer any questions. So if there are questions in the chat box, happy to answer. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, please look out for your provincial regulations because they will decide the time limits and so on and so on. Secondly, from the FEDSAS point of view, don't even try to become a super spreader by trying to have a full-on face-to-face election. It does mean that if you're having a full-day election, you better get CVs. My suggestion would be that you present or you draw up a little template so that everybody who wants to serve on the governing body, as Dave suggested, maybe you must do a little bit of recruiting, not to capture it, but to give people an opportunity and say in your notice to the school, to the parents, these are the qualities that we're looking for. You have them. And then have a little template, have people fill that in so that you know that is what you can send out back to the parents if it's a full day election where they can't meet the candidates, but they do know who they are electing. It's critical, this democratic and a vital role that the parents play in the school. That's me for now. Happy to answer any questions. I want to talk a little bit about the governors and their expectations. Yeah. Dave has mentioned it, but I want to mention a couple of things. First of all, this is the level of democracy where there is no payment for being on the governing body. I think that's quite important and parents must know that. Secondly, it's a long-term marriage. What I mean by that is it's 3 years of commitment. You can't come in and go out because that creates all sorts of unnecessary hassles about by-elections and that kind of thing. And then you don't have continuity. Third thing I think that is very important is that in terms of the governors, ladies and gentlemen, we as principals, and I say we because in my dreams I'm still a principal. We as principals actually have to do what FEDSAS calls recruit for character and train for capacity. Now, all the provincial education departments have a legal obligation to do training. but so do the governance structures like the government, like FEDSAS or any other of the governance structures. They have an obligation to do very important training. Now, from if I may, I'm just going to sort of polish my halo here as a FEDSAS chap. We tailor according to your needs. If you're a member, of course. If you're a member, we tailor training to your needs. Because to be honest, let's be absolutely honest, because we have to be. That's the only way to be a South African these days. Be honest. So, critical is that one size does not fit all. It does not fit all. So let me give you an example. I might be serving as part of my team of schools, some of the most wealthy schools in the country. But I'm also dealing with schools that have feeding schemes. Now, you can't then say, my treasurer is this or that or the other. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the best treasurers I've ever had the privilege of dealing with, please don't think that this is nasty in any way, was a person who was between jobs, if I can be politically correct, okay? Between jobs, had been working for an NGO and knew financial statements, knew how to make sure that there's a separation of responsibilities when dealing with money. And I'm saying that, and I'll close with this because Dave and Mr. Chetty probably have something to say as well. The critical thing is that most principals get into trouble, ladies and gentlemen, when they have the wrong processes for dealing with money. Okay, so make sure that your finance policy, your separation of processes, your procurement policy, that is in line with the law. And if you don't have one, well, then go to the FEDSAS website and find one, because they are legal and they are excellent. And they'll keep you out of trouble. Who wants to get into trouble? Thank you. Thank you.